just wanted to get your thoughts on, if you would have any ideas on how to fix this. I mean, how would, if you were in a position to do so, how would we ban? First and foremost, I think that getting thimerosal out of vaccines is just long overdue. And
well, I'll tell you what. Let me tell you my thought on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, in the United States, the only vaccine that's still in is for pregnant women, right?
Right.
So, my theory on that is that the drug companies think if it's at least in that one vaccine, then no one could argue that it should be out of the other vaccines outside of the U.S.
Right.
So I don't know why they still give it to pregnant women. Like, that's the last person I would give mercury to.
Yeah. It makes absolutely no sense, and it's a full 25 micrograms. Even in the infant formulations for the flu shot, which you're not supposed to give flu shot until 6 months of age. The infant formulations have 12.5.
Yeah.
But the maternal flu shot still has 25 micrograms, and it's given in any trimester.
Right.
And
so I still think, I don't know, I guess you didn't like the idea. I still think that starting a campaign that thimerosal from vaccines cause ticks. You start a campaign and you just make that your mantra, and I really do believe.
I do like that idea. I just, it does cause ticks. The thing that is getting a little disconcerting is that I work with Focus Autism, and I work with the head of Focus Autism is a guy named Barry Siegel. Barry is his wealth came from a roofing materials company called Bradco, and he recently wrote a letter to Thomas Frieden.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, and I wrote the letter. So one of the things that we highlighted was that, even with the CDC's publications, there hasn't yet been a publication except for Tosi in 2009 where you've been able to obviate the relationship between thimerosal and ticks in boys. And so we get a letter back from Beth Bell. Do you know who she is?
Yep, I know who she is. Yep.
Okay.
She
and
knows who I am. We know each other.
And it was like she didn't even read our letter, and she quoted the 2011 Institute of Medicine vaccine adverse events meetings and report, and 2011 IOM didn't even consider thimerosal. They were basically told by the CDC not to look at mercury. It wasn't a part of their purview.
It was supposed to be, they were working on the MVPO plan for a long time, and that was being run by Larry Pickering. Larry Pickering ran the, MVPO plan, and I helped them write that. I thought they kept verbal IQ and tics in there. That's the last time I had looked at it. I thought it was in there.
What they did, and I have a taped transcript of this. Ellen Clayton, who was the chair for the Vaccine Adverse Events and Causality Committee, said specifically we were not asked to look at mercury at all, and so we didn't. And this was at I guess the petitioners in the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program have a yearly conference. And this particular year, it was back in Oakland, and And so they had, specific presentations. You were able to get transcripts of the presentation, and I did. I got an MP3 of it, and I have it on transcript that she. So anyhow, I mean, what we're doing is we're going to go back, and I wrote a rebuttal to the letter that Beth Bell sent, because it just there were a lot of things in there that were it was like.
Let me just tell you why Beth Bell wrote you. Do you know why she wrote you? Do you understand the structure?
A little bit, but go ahead and tell me anyway.
All right. They moved to quote unquote make immunization independent of the immunization program. They moved it into a separate center, and so the
she's National Center of Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And so it's in a really silly place, but they did it theoretically because they were trying to make them independent groups.
Right.
But they are not independent at all. But so that's the bottom line. So she, she's tight with all these people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
I have no doubt. But where do we push? I mean, one of the things that
here's what. Let me just say. So I see a lot of your stuff online. I saw you interviewed Congressman Posey. Is it?
Posey? Yeah. Right. That was not my best interview. I basically was the king of and I was also breathing heavily in the phone. I did not do a good job.
No, I know, but I just think there has to be a mantra, and it's, the mantra should be: we know thimerosal causes ticks. That's been demonstrated. That's been demonstrated in the big studies, and just keep saying that. We know thimerosal causes ticks, because the CDC never says thimerosal doesn't cause ticks. The CDC always says thimerosal doesn't cause autism. So you have to take it off that. And I really do think it's a public relations campaign, but I also have to say, these drug companies and their promoters, they're making such a big deal of these measles outbreaks, and they, now they're making a big deal that polio is coming back, and polio comes back all the time in third world countries. It's like a never-ending thing where the press just loves to hype it, and it scares people. It scares the crap out of people when they hype those two types of outbreaks.
Right.
But I think they teach you at the CDC. You have to stay on message, and the message that I think would start getting out, and then you wouldn't have the press jumping on you saying, well, vaccines don't cause autism. If you said, yeah, that's true, but vaccines do cause ticks. And then eventually you could get the message over to, ticks are like 5 times as common among kids with autism, or whatever the number is. I don't know the exact number.
It's about 4 times, but yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I just think I really do think it's staying on message with something different than autism, because the press and everyone, Jenny McCarthy, all those people, you bring up autism and vaccines and you just get hammered. Who's the company that was, who sponsored one of your groups?
Oh, Chili's.
Chili's.
Yeah, Chili's,
Chili just got fried. They just completely got fried.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So I think in the short term, you take it off to something that's true, and it's a different story. It's a different story.
Right.
And you can point to that Italy study and just look at the means, and the means are quite different in that study for ticks. I really do think that study actually supports the idea. And then the other thing about the Italy study was the only randomly assigned study, and it was a much smaller exposure. So if you find something in there, and they found 2 positive effects, right? If I'm recalling correctly.
Right.
Again, it's a study that randomly assigned. It's the only study I know where there was random assignment, and you found 2 negative associations where it was increased likelihood of maternal, wasn't it verbal IQ? I thought it was
verbal IQ, right, right.
Yeah, it was verbal IQ, and I can't remember the other one. But
yeah.
tics, I'm telling you, if my recollection is correct, tics were significant in earlier drafts of the paper.
Right, right. And what happened with that information request, they put it into the FOIA office. And
once it's in the FOIA office, it's gone.
It's going to take forever. It's going to take forever.
No, I know. It's going to take 2 or 3 years, right? They tell me they're 2.5 years behind. They actually said with the Posey thing, they treated it as FOIA because he's not the head of a committee.
Right.
So I think it's you got to come up with a different message where you won't get hammered, and they can't deny it. Right.
Right.
The only thing I know for sure is that I really can say that pretty confidently. Vaccines cause tics, and we replicated that. The Burrell article replicated that, and showed that once you took into account the number of tests and reduced them down to constructs, the one thing you couldn't get to go away was the tick effect.
Right. Right. I agree, and I'm even using that in my son's vaccine court case because he has tics, and so we have that. So and it's been confirmed, in several studies. Not to mention your study, and then the Burrell study that was reanalysis in 2012. And I'll go back and I'll look at those means on Posey as well. That's a good idea.
Look at the means. Yeah, look at the means. They're very close. You could do a simple t-test and see they're very close to significant.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, have you ever contacted Dr. Doria in South America, the person who's done the vaccine studies?
I'm in contact with Jose. Yeah, I'm in contact with Jose. And
is it a male or female? Or female?
It's a male. It's a male. And then I believe that I believe the way that it goes that his wife works with him as well.
Okay.
Okay, so there is a male and a female. Yes.
Right. So they're the two scientists that actually seem motivated and seem to try, wanting to study the problem.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they still are. But
I will. You make a good point, and because I'm looking at other scientists that do not have quote unquote tarnished reputations to look at.
It has their name on it, people immediately dismiss.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And the other thing for you to consider is to find a couple of scientists you trust.
That's true. So, I'm not very high on the list myself.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that if you're really serious about this, you find a couple of good scientists, and you walk them through what you're doing, and if you can convince a couple of good scientists that what you're doing makes sense, and then you encourage them to submit papers. And here's the other thing: is you got to get it out of the medical journals. You got to move it to the psychology journals. I don't know if you saw, the Burrell article got published in a psychology journal. It wasn't actually, it was like pediatric psychology.
Right.
All right.
It was a journal of pediatric psychology. I saw that, yeah.
Right. But if you get it out of the medical world and into the psychology world, you're not going to get as much bias from the medical establishment that has such a stronghold over these medical journals.
Right. Right.
So
now, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not as well traveled in that realm. Is Journal of Pediatric Psychology a good one to look at?
Oh, it's a great journal. It's a very good journal, and we got great reviews from that journal, I'll tell you. So they actually made us up our discussion. They actually said, why are you downplaying the association with ticks. So they actually made
Well,
it keep it back up.
see, this is the deal, though. You're a straight shooter. I mean,
Yeah.
when you did the 2007 paper and the 2012 follow-up paper, you called a spade with these particular effects. And so, this is why when I look at when I look at Stergreen was
Bernier's former graduate student.
That's right. And one of the things I found out now, just to ask you the question, and to let you know, I did go to the Office of Oversight and Government Reform, ICE's office.
Yep.
I saw what had been turned over.
Yep.
I will say that over 50% of it came from you, because I can tell what comes from you, and I just know what you have. And so over 50% of it, in fact, all I did was I got up to the C's, the letter C in the alphabet for your stuff. That was it. The rest of it is still, being reviewed by the Office of the General Counsel somewhere. So I only got up to letter C on your deck. There was a lot of stuff. Now, I got kind of worried when I saw that, and I believe I know what's going on, but I saw that email that you forwarded that that Office of General Counsel is trying to pull together, like, how much effort they've had to put on my FOIAs. I mean, that's I'm not really. I'm not. That didn't put me in my happy place. So do you think that they're just using that to go back to ICE's staff, or? Are you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can. Yeah.
No. So
Really?
her sending this email. The fact that didn't come from someone who was a lawyer. It came from this woman, who's just out of school and doesn't know her head from her ass. I mean, this is the type of stuff. This is the type of stuff they do.
Right.
So they don't say who it's from. They just say OGC. They don't say.
I don't think that's in my FOIA case. In my FOIA case, there aren't any pending motions. The FOIA appeal right now. The next, the decision basically comes from the appellate judge, and so we're, both sides have presented their arguments in the appeal, and the appellate judge may come back and ask for more information. So I don't think that has anything to do with the appeals case. I think it has to do with OGC does not want ICE's office to release any of those documents to me. I've seen them. They would not let me take them out of their office, and I didn't. I believe you. I was tempted. I had like a half a gigabyte hard drive in my pocket that I could have whipped out when nobody was looking, and I didn't use it. I didn't. I wouldn't. I don't want to go to federal prison, and so
Yeah. No, you don't.
No. But this whole thing was something to do with what's going on with ICE's, with that information request. So.
I think as far away from those documents as possible.
Right.
So,
I mean, there were very compelling things in there, and it will be interesting to see what happens. We'll see. But I did want to ask. I pretty much completed the reanalysis on the DiStefano MMR study.
Yep.
And those spreadsheets that you sent me.
Yeah, I'm not here talking. What was that?
The spreadsheets that you sent me, race 1, race 2, and race 3. Can I ask where those came from? Were those just ones that you had, or where you had compiled results, or?
Those were analyses I ran for a group, every
Okay.
single Excel spreadsheet you've seen, those are analyses I ran for our group
Okay.
over the, several year period where I was presenting results to the group.
Right. Right.
So,
Now, okay, so these were your analysis files, and then you had basically presented them directly to the group.
I would, on a weekly basis, meet with the 4 co-authors, and we would discuss results. And you can see how those progressed over time. Those are,
right.
I labeled the only way you want to know. The only way I was able to keep track of the dates on those files.
Yeah.
The servers would change all the time, and they would change the dates on the files. And thank goodness I put the actual date in the name of the file.
Right.
Because
right.
otherwise you wouldn't know the week that I had done it.
No.
Do that later. Yeah. What was that? I was just talking to my daughter. So.
Oh no, that's fine. No, that's fine. But the question I had, if you go to Race 3, then you had alternative models. You have a results tab. It's like the second tab that's in the spreadsheet, and it looks like on black on time. Okay, and the reason why I'm asking this is because I told you before I got a really strong effect with African American males.
Yep.
And I saw the effect. It was statistically significant at 36 months as well as 24 months.
Yep.
It wasn't as high as at 24. Obviously, it was like 1.73 or something. So that black on time. Do you know? Was this just a conditional logistic regression that was matched?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a conditional logistic regression.
Okay. Okay. So the numbers then would the way I understand this, the odds ratios that you came up with, then if you just ran it as on time, then you would get a specific odds ratio, but would that be assigned to a 36-month cutoff, or how would that work?
No, on time would be, if I'm remembering correctly, and I don't have it sitting in front of me, on time would have been that they would have been vaccinated by 24 months of age, right? They would have been vaccinated by the recommended date. By
the recommended, okay. And then it looks like you did this unmatched and probably also conditional logistic regression, and then it went up just by a little bit. They were basically the same. They were basically the same in each one.
Yep.
So did you ever run that, did slice it further just to look at African American males?
My guess is I did, but I can't recall. Honestly, the only thing, in terms of memory, like I can look at those files and I know I ran those things. I don't know what else I ran. I could look, I could look through the SAS programs. I've never looked through those historically, but I believe I have them historically. I think they're I think they're there. I can't remember off the top of my head. So I honestly, the way I remember things is I dump them into files and I save them and I can go back and review them.
Okay. Yeah, would you be able to do that? I mean, I really.
I can track them. I can track them in the SAS program.
Okay. Now and one of the things that I did find in this weird is that when I used the 36-month cutoff for African American males, I only had 7 cases after 36 months. Okay, so the cohort was getting small.
Yep.
I had like 7 cases, and I can't remember how many controls. And then obviously the lion's share of the cases were for individuals that got the MMR before 36 months. Now, when I wanted to correct for low birth weight, so I threw out low birth weight. But what I found was that in my cases, after the cases in the individuals that got the MMR after 36 months, I wasn't throwing low birth weight. I was throwing out individuals that didn't have a birth weight reported at all. So So you basically look at that, and it was essentially the same as the birth certificate cohort. Does that make sense? I can explain it one other way. When you look at the data, and you look at African American cases of autism, there are 7 cases. There are 4 cases that did have a birth certificate and that were normal birth weight, and then the 3 remaining cases didn't have a birth certificate, so they didn't have birth weight information at all.
That were vaccinated late.
That were vaccinated late. And so I did not include that in my analysis because I felt like a cohort that had, less than 5 cases in it, I just didn't want to include.
Yeah, you're going to be criticized if you did for that small one.
Right. So I threw that particular one out. And I don't take this as a criticism. I'm just trying to understand what was in the paper. But when
let me just clarify for you. You can criticize the hell out of this. I don't think it was perfect, and I will tell you, we were locked in to analyses. That's the problem with all of this, is we agreed up front what, actually, with this paper,
Right. No,
in this paper, we deviated from what we agreed to up front. So go ahead. So criticize away.
But the only thing, if you look at the final paper, when they looked at the effective race, they only looked at the effective race in the birth certificate cohort.
I know.
That doesn't seem right to me. Why would you toss out you don't need a birth certificate. You don't need a birth certificate.
I agree. I thought you found that immediately. I thought you told me you found that immediately.
Yes, I did find that immediately, but I wasn't sure. I want to go back to these things. I'm not, Bill, I'm not an epidemiologist by training.
No. I know, but I just want to say that you found what I consider the biggest problem. So this is here's what I want to be careful of. Okay.
Yes.
I want to be careful of not. Here's what I want to say is, like if I were forced to testify or something like that, I'm not going to lie. But I also don't want to say things to you right now that aren't some written form.
Right.
I want to be very careful about that, and I will say, if I'm forced, if it comes through legitimate channels, and I'm forced to answer questions, I'm not going to lie. I basically have stopped lying. So
did you raise that? Did you raise that issue at the time were you allowed to see?
I raised this. I will say I raised this issue. I will say I raised this issue the 2 days before. The fact that I can talk honestly to you about this now is so freeing. So I'll just say that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Well, let me check. I jotted down a few notes on this. Now, and have you ever been to, one of the things that I noticed when I was back in D.C. going through the documents at OGR, and you've told to me several times, nobody's stupid enough to put in an email to,
Never.
You need to dilute down this relationship.
Never.
Or get rid of this relationship.
Never.
But
Never.
What is said in these closed-door meetings? I mean, do people say, "Oh, well, this is unacceptable," or is it just, do they always say, "Oh, this can't be right," or?
I wish I could tell you the quote that was said, but there is a specific quote about this very finding that will be etched in my head for life.
Okay. And you don't have to tell me it. That's fine. I understand.
I'm not going to tell you it. It was by one of the other co-authors.
Okay.
And it is etched in my head for life.
Okay. Well, you've given me a lot to think. You always give me so much to think about. I want to go back and I want to think about this whole issue with ticks. If I was to press the soft spot in the CDC in terms of like submitting a response letter, I think the response letter will come back, and I'm going to sign it. We're going to get some other scientists to sign off on the letter as well as Barry Siegel. But one of the things that I thought, regarding to Marisol, is it should go to Frieden, because Frieden could be the guy to save the day. I mean, he's got clean hands, I think.
He does have clean hands, and but I don't know where he stands on all this. I really don't.
Okay.
I do think this is what I think Frieden has done. I think he has closed himself off from all of this and avoids it and says, this is Colleen Boyle's and Melinda Wharton's problem. So
really,
I think, well, that's what I'm guessing. I don't know that for sure. I'm guessing that this is just a political hot potato, and they made a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of documents they don't want you to see, and what I was relieved about, when I sent you what the National NCIRD did in terms of the request, they don't usually include, Melinda Wharton and Kristen Pope in those requests. They usually just include David Shea and I. So, we're often the targets of all the FOIAs, and they don't make it broader. And what I find even funnier is Kristen Pope is the person directing this document gathering. So, Kristen Pope,
odd.
What?
How
I
odd.
know. She is thick. She was thick and deep into all of this. She was the go-between. All the communication went from me to Brooke Berry to Kristen. So everything was filtered through Kristen. And Kristen reports to Melinda Wharton. And it's still the case. So
and it wasn't really Kristen. Brooke was the one that really could not stand me. Brooke Berry could not stand, I would get on the phone with her, and for the longest time I would deal with Lorene Spencer, and bless her heart, I mean, she did the best she could possibly do with me, and I was not a nice person. I was a very, very angry person when I was dealing with Lorene Spencer, but it's interesting to see that Kristen is still kind of in the middle of that, because when things got sort of switched around and I was no longer dealing with Lorene Spencer, then I was dealing with Kristen Pope and Brooke Berry. So
yeah, and I have to tell you, Kristen and Brooke knew I was sitting on a lot of documents, and when I shared all these documents, Brooke Berry is probably, I mean, you saw my email. She's probably the only person I trusted to give me a straight answer.
Yeah.
I went over to her office and I said, I hear they want us to share everything. And she said, yep, they want us to share everything. So,
wow.
Okay. It was a situation where it was the first time they said they want everything associated with any thimerosal study.
But they do want this. They are arm wrestling with oversight and government reform right now. I mean, big time. I've gone back and forth. I get calls from oversight and government reform staff, and they'll have a list of questions for me. They wanted to know about the litigation because CDC is claiming attorney-client privilege, and
they're trying to box you out.
That's that's fine. Okay.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sitting on a mountain. Yeah. It's all right. But
here, I mean, here's what you have to do, honestly, and I'm telling you from the way I've changed my life. Here's what you have to do: is you just have to try not to get emotions involved. Stay as settled and sound as you can be. Talk to people about how to market this fact that thimerosal causes ticks.
You're right.
It's a marketing thing. It is all about marketing. And you have to learn how do you get a message out? And I'm telling you, if you take autism out of it, you will get that message out. And once you get that message out, do you think a pregnant mother would want to take a vaccine that they knew caused tics?
Absolutely not. No,
Absolutely
no.
not. I would never
Okay.
give my wife a vaccine that I thought caused tics.
Right, right. I mean, it's genius.
It's
genius. You've told me this before. It just didn't sink in. So okay.
But it's a marketing thing. It's a marketing thing. You have to figure out how to market this, and it has to come from other voices. It can't just come from you because they made you the poster boy of,
Mm-hmm.
they want to portray you as crazy, and I honestly I think you've been persistent. You have been right. I will say most of the time. I will say the Geyers were not right, and the Geyers, the Geyers, I don't know them personally, but
Sure.
I know things they did. They took exact copies of papers we wrote, and they published them under their own name. So, word for word, and I just
Okay.
thought that
Yeah,
was wrong.
I know a little bit about that, but yeah. Okay.
So,
Well,
anyways,
listen, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to get back to that.
Okay.
Okay. Stay on message. Stay on a message that the press won't jump on you for.
Right. Absolutely.
And get other people to say it. You have to get other scientists to say it because, again, you're the poster child for this crazy person bothering the CDC, making their life so difficult. La-di-da-di-da.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Hey, this has been extremely helpful. If you do get a chance, if you can look at your SAS output and see if you ever did that.
I'll forward you. I'll forward you lots of programs. Okay.
Awesome.
Good.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Good talking.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Posse is. He seems like he's on the warpath. So.
Yeah, pretty much. He was not happy with Intel. That's very sure. So.
And I didn't know about this study that Tom Insel was talking about. I asked Marsha Lynn about it, and she said she was going to find out for me, but I am going to find out. Do you know anything about this study?
I have no idea what he's talking about. I heard that, and, my initial thought was, well, the way he's talking about it, I can predict what the outcome is going to be, but, going back to what you said previously, I'm sure they didn't look at ticks.
Well, let me tell you something really interesting I learned about this week.
Okay.
So in the midst of this, and, I was yelling at Marsha Lynn this week. I mean, Marsha Lynn and I were, I suggested I resign, and it's like that type of stuff going on right now. And the whole place is a big pressure cooker. So, and I don't know if you know this, the CDC was invited to testify, and they declined. So
Really?
Yeah, and Marsha Lynn said she's been offered to testify. She won't. Colleen has been offered to testify. Colleen said she will never go and testify again.
And they don't subpoena. I mean, it's a very, very rare instance that they would actually subpoena.
Really?
Oh yeah, no. Representative Issa doesn't like to use a subpoena unless he's really cornered to do so. It's just, it's one of those things where if he goes there too often, then it comes under considerable criticism, and he's trying to lobby for future chairmanships. Now he won't be the chairman. Most likely his term will be up at the end of 2014, so because it's a 6-year term, and he's had it 6 years. So, but no, they just don't like to use him. So I used to, I used to be a page. I worked I was a page in the U.S. Senate when I was 14 years old.
You're kidding.
No.
But let me just say this. So, all right. So I just, I don't know where you're going with all this, or how this is all going to play out. I just want to tell you one thing. Right now, I'm sitting in a very pretty position in terms of providing you a lot of information. And let me tell you what is just become available. And I was talking to Marshall and my team lead, my immediate supervisor, this week, and I was telling him what should be done, because it's just outrageous. You will die when you hear this. We have 800 kids with autism that have all been given the ADI, well, the Autism Diagnostic Interviews for the parents, right? And the ADOS is for the kids. Right? So all of them have been given the ADI and ADOS. So they've all been given these instruments, all confirmed cases of autism. We have population controls of similar size, and we have disability controls of similar size. Now, this is the study I was brought in to clean up. You know, Diana Schindel left town, left for Denmark, and then I was brought in to clean it up. And it's a big mess. And but regardless, there's now data available. You know, and there's going to be more data available. We're gonna have 1,200 kids with autism as part of this study.
Wow.
With all their medical records and all their vaccine records abstracted. So what's amazing, now this is what's going to be shocking to you, it shocked the crap out of me. They have, you know, 6 different sites contributing data, and they all put in proposals to do studies. So far there's about 50 proposals in for people ready to do studies. Not a single one of them looks at vaccines, not one.
Wow.
So I ripped into these people this week, and I'm like, these vaccine studies have to be done. This is the largest case control study you could ever do. They're all objectively identified as kids with autism. You have the vaccine records, and what I just, you know, after seeing the posse, you know, hearing, I was like, how are you guys going to answer the question when, you know, they want these environmental studies and want to look at all these risk factors? What are you going to say when you have 1,200 autism cases and a bunch of controls, and you never looked at vaccines, and you have all their vaccine records?
Oh, my goodness.
And we have their prenatal. We have all the prenatal stuff.
You have the prenatal too? I mean, this is like Disneyland. That's
it
incredible.
is like Disneyland. So here's the point. Here's what I said to them. I told them this study needs to be done. I said it should be contracted out to some independent organization, and I said groups like Safe Minds should be included in the study, and we were insane to be sitting on this data and not have, you know, an independent group, independent of the CDC completely. I said CDC not even touch it, not even have a co-author on it.
Right.
Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is I want to give you the name of the study so you can start telling people to ask questions about this study. Because this data is sitting ready to go, and no one has analyzed it yet. And they don't really want people to know that this data exists. Again, you know, you were the first person to get the MMR autism. I just can't believe we actually got you that data.
That's incredible to me. I'm very thankful. Let's put it that way.
It's mind-boggling that it sat on one CD, and actually the guy who had the one CD just came down with pancreatic cancer. So literally that study data could have been gone for good.
No kidding.
Yeah. Anyways, so the name of the study is the Study to Explore Early Development. It's called SEED. If you go on the CDC, what?
SEED. S-E-E-D.
SEED. Yeah. Do you have a computer in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Just search for CDC and then SEED and autism, and you should be able to pull up a description of the study.
Okay, hold on. SEED, Autism Spectrum Disorders. Okay, there it is.
Yep.
Okay, let me bookmark this while I've got it.
Well, that's the gold mine. That's the mother lode of mother lodes, because it doesn't matter what Insel does. He doesn't have confirmed autism cases in his study. His study will probably be some type of record review where they just look at kids who have autism in the records.
So is this data that I would eventually be able to access myself?
Well, right now it's under lock and key. Only the principal investigators can get access to it.
Right.
But if you can get congressmen if you can get posse to start asking questions about this study, this will become the, it's like the leak in the dam.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. There's a tab on data and statistics that I'm looking at. Okay, and I see that, and
now there's one study that's been published from it just describing the study and the sample. So It was Diana Schindell's the first author. It's a 2012 paper, and you can just look it up. It might actually be on the website, I'm not sure. But it's a Diana Schindell's paper, and it just pissed me off. I read it for the first time Friday, and she references 2 of her papers with Thompson. I was just like, are you guys fucking insane? I'm like, are you guys really this fucking insane?
Oh my goodness. Well, here it is. I looked it up on PubMed.
Okay.
It's in JAD, Journal of Autism Development. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's the one paper that describes the first sample. There's seed 1 and seed 2.
Oh, in the middle, they piled it on. There's like 20 co-authors.
Yeah, it's all the PIs, everyone.
Okay.
I mean, it's a big study. It's a there's 6 sites that are contributing data. But it is the mother lode. Literally no one. Oh, and then you know what else I found out this week? I almost went nuts. So do you know the name?
Can't have you do that again, dude.
No, I know. Do you know the name Lisa Crowan?
Yes, I know Lisa Crowan. Isn't she? She's California.
Yeah, she's at Northern California Kaiser. So Diana Schindell is still involved in these studies. So there are 50 proposals. One of the studies is on prenatal infections. And I started asking questions. I'm like, who's doing the prenatal infection study? And she said, Lisa, and Lisa has invited Diana to participate. I'm like, you are having Diana Schindell as a co-author on a childhood infections paper. While she's in Denmark with her boyfriend. I just, you don't know how insane this all is. This is just absolutely insane. So then Marshall and my supervisor, it's Laura Sheave. I don't know if you've ever seen that name.
Yes, I've seen Laura's name before.
Yeah. So anyways, the 2 of them are looking at it and they're like, oh, maybe you're right, but maybe that is a bad idea.
You think? I think, Diana's putting herself in danger just by showing her head.
I could not believe she was there. I could not believe she was there.
Oh my goodness. That is just crazy.
Yeah. So anyways, the bottom line is I want to help you get the best data available. That is the best data available.
Okay.
No one has analyzed it yet. If you can get someone, and Brian, you have to get someone other than you asking these questions, because you are like, they.
I'm damaged good. I understand. No, and I do have some people in mind. I absolutely have people in mind.
You just have to seed these questions around to different people and have different people ask these questions. And, so it's prenatal. I was told there's both maternal influenza, prenatal records. There's ROGAM.
Really?
Yeah. So
ROGAM.
It's all there. But I've never looked at it yet. But I could actually, I could actually go into the database right now and do a frequency count on things. But I'm not. I'm not going to do anything like that right now. I'm just really trying to sort this all out. I'm trying to, you know, I'm getting in trouble because I'm blowing up and stuff like that, and I'm getting really agitated, and I just have to settle down.
Right.
So,
right. We had mentioned on, I think on a previous voicemail, something about maybe taking a leave of absence or putting in for a new assignment.
yeah, I was considering getting detailed out of the branch. The downside to that is I would no longer have any access to this type of information that I'm sharing with you. You know, I'm learning more and more. As I ask more and more, I'm learning more and more. These people are like in one big bubble. And their bubble's getting smaller and smaller.
Right.
But these PIs, and it's two PIs that are really tight with Diana, and it's Lisa Crone and Danny Phelan. Do you know Danny Phelan, that name, F-A-L-L-I-N?
That's a name that's not familiar to me.
All right, she's a genetics expert, and she is at Hopkins.
Okay.
And
Lisa Crone as well.
Right. Now, Danny really likes Diana and is tight with Diana because we've been, you know, collecting genetic information on all these subjects. All these subjects have bloods drawn and
wow.
swabs. So here's the other crazy thing is the CDC has not been able to get resources to sequence all these kids that we have. And we have samples where you could sequence every single kid, and only a couple hundred have been sequenced, and it's because Danny Phelan went and got money from the NIH. And I'm just like, are you serious? You guys can't go out and get a small sum of money, and it's not even a lot of money. It would just be a couple $1 million, and they could
right.
get every single kid sequenced. They're sitting on these samples. Yeah, they're sitting on these samples.
Can you imagine what we could do with that?
Oh my God! It's just like when I heard the congressman like asking these guys questions like, "What are you guys doing?" I'm like, "We are sitting on this gold mine," and it's just here's the deal: is the CDC is they're paralyzed. The whole system is paralyzed right now, and the whole branch is paralyzed, and it's becoming more paralyzed. So there's less and less and less being done as the place just comes to a grinding halt. So really what it needs is, you know, for Congress just to come in and, you know, say, give us the data, and we're going to have an independent contractor do it and bring in the autism advocates and have them intimately involved in the studies.
Right. Right.
So.
Wow. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, this I can definitely talk to Bill Posey about this. I think that he
ask about this study. Just start asking questions about this study.
I will, and be able to kind of sit down with him and explain what's going on with the study. Just ask questions. I mean, I don't want to appear to know too much. You know, that's just too much of a tip off. But if I wanted to take you back to something, and if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine.
Let me just say one more thing. All right, one more thing is you saw that slide that I sent you, right? That 2012.
Yeah, the Bareil presentation and the slide. Yes.
Yeah, Jack Bareil. And you saw the last 3 slides, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
Did you see the reviewers' comments?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Did I ever?
No, I know, and we were just trying to demonstrate that when this paper sat in clearance for over a year, the birth defects made us add the guy from Rochester as a co-author. I've never been involved in a study like this before where I was asked to add a co-author in the middle of clearance.
So you were told that, get out, in the middle of the clearance process, then that guy was recruited.
Yes, the birth defects recommended that we add him as a co-author because they said we didn't know enough about ticks. So they added Ed Trevathan's buddy, this guy's at Rochester.
Oh, so that's Ed Trevathan's friend.
Yes.
Okay.
So we added him, and then every step of the way we had to water down the discussion, and then we got it out. And those reviewers, that gives you an example of what happens is that every single reviewer said, why are you not highlighting your significant results? I mean, it was a unanimous opinion of independent observers.
Well, I tell you, it made for good reading.
Unbelievable.
It was pretty amazing, and it seems like, without being too vicious, it seems like sort of the visceral response to a lot of people in CDC whenever they see a connection between an adverse event and a vaccine or a vaccine component.
No, I know. It just is. I actually presented it to Marshall Lynn's branch. It was before I moved in there. I had Jack present it, and Jack and I prepared those slides, and I was very happy that we put in that final slide that we confirmed. I don't know if you read that conclusion.
Yes.
We confirmed, that thimerosal causes ticks.
You did, and you've given me such a gift. I mean, that's such a hook.
Yeah.
In terms of getting thimerosal out of vaccines, getting them out of the
Absolutely. I am telling you, if people went around saying that, do you think a mother, you and I have had this discussion already, but again, this is what blows my mind. What blows my mind is somehow ticks have not been added to the vaccine schedule, to the adverse event schedule.
Right. It's not. It's not on the. It's not definitely not a table injury.
Yeah, but why? This is what I don't get. How are they? I started wondering, how does something get onto the table?
Well, and this is huge.
I know you told me, but how does something get onto the table? I don't get it.
Oh, it has to go through HRSA. I don't know if it's ACCV that puts it on the table, but it is very, very difficult to get something on the table. I know that much.
Got it. Well, anyways, you have that. You have that to support you now.
Yes, I appreciate it. That was amazing.
Yep.
The other question I wanted to bring up was you had 2 voicemails ago had talked about 2 individuals that I wasn't sure, and if you don't want to answer this, that's fine. But 2 individuals that you wanted to point out some of their activities or perhaps some of their behavior.
Well, this is Brian. This is where you and I don't know each other very well, and here's what I struggle with: I struggle with saying anything that isn't in writing that can't be backed up. Because here's my fear. Okay.
I understand.
So let's say you go public with anything. Okay, whatever. And then it becomes clear that you got information from me. And then people will, I talk to you, you have a son with autism, and I have great shame now when I meet families with kids with autism, because I have been part of the problem.
Well, not for my son personally. My son got his vaccines in 1998, dude. You don't have to shoulder that one. No. Here's what I shoulder. I shoulder that the CDC has put the research 10 years behind, all right? Mm-hmm. Because the CDC has not been transparent, we've missed 10 years of research because the CDC is so paralyzed right now by anything related to autism. Right. They're not doing what they should be doing because they're afraid to look for things that might be associated. So anyway, there's still a lot of shame with that. So when I talk to a person like you who has to live this day in and day out, I say, well, so I have to deal with, a few months of hell if this all becomes public. No big deal. I'm not having to deal with a child who's suffering day in and day out. So that's the way I view all this. I'm completely ashamed of what I did. That's that. But you were told to do specific things.
Well, the higher ups wanted to do certain things, and I went along with it. So, I was in terms of chain of command, I was number 4 out of 5, and When you have three...
Was it Melinda Wharton?
No, the co-authors, all right? So we have...
You mean Colleen?
Yeah, Colleen was the division chief, Marceline was a branch chief, and Frank was a branch chief at the time.
Right.
Now Colleen is a center director, Frank is the director of immunization safety, and Marceline's the branch chief. They're still all much more senior than me. So we're in a room discussing these things, and there's things I've shared. There's things I haven't even shared with you because I can't prove it, and that's what I struggle with. I don't want to share things with you that I can't prove, that there aren't hard records, because I am worried that the other 4 people will collude and say, no, that's not true. So that's my
and
fear.
Your word against theirs, and they're the
Exactly.
higher up.
Well, they're higher up. It's 4. Does that make sense?
I wish it didn't.
No, I know. No, I know. But that's the way it'll play out. So that's why I'm trying to give you as many hard records as possible. And I think I've shared those last 2 that I sent you. I don't know if you looked at them. Did you look at those results?
Yes, I did.
Did you see that? You see that the strongest association is those without mental retardation.
Right.
The non-isolated. There's the non-MR mental retard. So the effect is where you would think it would happen. It's
right.
It's with the kids without other conditions, without the comorbid conditions.
Right.
And the I honestly looked at those results. I had not gone through these hard copy papers. I don't think I've ever gone through them since 2004, and I came across those, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, this is 0.97 to 16, and I'm like, yeah, it's not statistically significant, but the odds ratio is 8, and if we had 1 more subject, it probably would have been significant. I was just looking at that. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe we did what we did, but we did.
Yeah.
So it's all there. It's all there. I have handwritten notes.
I understand your reluctance to name specific names because if you can't prove it,
right,
it's your word against theirs.
And it'll be 4 to 1. It'll be 4 to 1. So what I'm trying to do to get people starting to ask questions about seed, I am sitting in a dream spot to basically give you feedback how that information is playing out.
That would be tremendous.
But there is this dream data set. I'm saying this is dream data set. Now, again, Brian, I don't know if vaccines cause a certain percentage or whatever. I can say confidently, I do think thimerosal causes ticks. I'm not sure about the rest. I don't know, but I will say that ticks. I can say ticks are 4 times more prevalent in kids with autism.
Right.
So yeah, there is biologic plausibility right now. I really do believe there is, to say that thimerosal causes autism-like features, and that's the way I would say it. So anyway, so I want to be a resource. I want to be valuable to you. I want you to have someone in the system that can give you feedback as these things go through. And as long as you're willing to, let me sit where I am, I'll sit as long as I can tolerate it.
Okay.
And we'll just keep going.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. You've given me a lot to think about, and let me really kind of explore this seed website, and then
and get the paper, get the Diana Schendel paper.
I will. I've got access to JAD, so I can do that.
Okay, great.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, Bill.
All right, good talking to you. Bye.
Good talking to you. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm about as bad as it gets on these phones. So, trying to juggle 2 calls is like way beyond me. At least I always want to do the free conference call line because that's a little bit easier. But so you're getting ready to head out for vacation?
Yeah, we're leaving tomorrow.
Okay. Well, Do you have time to talk tonight? I mean, I don't want to keep you too long because I know you got work in the morning.
Yeah, now is better than any other time, so why don't we talk now?
Okay, I appreciate it. I wanted to talk to you about the MMR study. Just to let you know, I wrote a paper on my results on MMR.
Yeah.
And that paper is out for peer review right now.
Yep.
And what I was thinking about this, and it hadn't dawned on me before, but it will most likely include, depending on the peer review and everything, include something that I got from you. And I wanted to let you know that as soon as possible. I haven't heard back from the peer review. I'm not sure how long it's going to take. They have a web system. But one of the things that I demonstrated in the paper was that by taking the cohort of African Americans and then limiting it to only those that had the valid Georgia birth certificate, that the relationship went away.
Yep.
So anyhow, I'll keep you apprised on that, but I'm concerned. I wanted to ask you a few questions. You had said earlier that you were referring to the MMR study, and you had said something about being locked in on specific analyses, and I wasn't sure what you meant. I thought, well, maybe you have an IRB and they lock you in, to what you're going to run.
Right. So let me just give you the three. There were the three studies. There was the
Sorry about that in the background. I don't know if you hear that. That's, I'm up in a hotel at a super fun site for my other research, and this has been a crazy experience so far. So.
Okay. So there's three. There were three big studies I worked on. Okay.
Okay.
So the 2007 New England Journal paper.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we had an external panel of consultants that included Sally Bernard.
Right.
Then we had the 2010 Price Autism Thimerosal paper.
Right.
And we had an external panel that included Sally Bernard.
Right.
And then for this one, so let me just say for those two. For those two, we agreed with the panel up front what the analyses would be.
Right.
And then we didn't deviate from those analyses. We presented them as we found them, and then we said we're making public use data sets, and people can go do additional analyses if they want.
And you've done that?
Yeah, and we did that. Now with the MMR autism one, we had an analysis plan that we were supposed to execute as was written. And, I'm going to be sharing these draft analysis plans that we had, and you can see whether we did what we said we're going to do.
Right. What I'm trying to establish is if anything,
Let me just please, just so you understand this, we didn't have an external review panel for the
right.
MMR autism one. So it was the one study where we could end up just replicating exactly what Tom Verstraeten ended up doing, which was just creating a mess while the CDC tried to sort out something they couldn't understand.
Right.
So, okay, so go ahead.
Okay. I want to, I'm thinking about this like a trial lawyer.
Yep.
And okay, down the road,
yeah.
This becomes public.
Yep.
And CDC says, well, that's Bill Thompson. He's crazy.
Yeah, they will.
But then we have a case that shows, okay, these are the analyses that you agreed upon, and then you had your Verstraeten oh shit moment,
yep.
And then you basically deviated from that particular plan in order to reduce the statistical significance that you saw in the African American cohort.
Well, we didn't report findings that all I will say is we didn't report those findings, and I can tell you what other I can tell you what the other co-authors will say.
Uh-huh.
They'll say that they didn't think the race variable was reliable, is what they're going to say.
But okay, playing that out, I mean, as a statistician, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, I'm not going to defend it. I'm just trying to speculate.
Okay, right. No, I understand. I just think that you know, that if other co-authors were coming forward, were trying to dispute and say, well, we didn't think that was a good, you know, that the race was reliable, then, you know, I'm trying to play that out because you know, because when they say something like that, they basically paint themselves in a corner.
Well, that's all I'm going to say is they're going to say that.
Okay.
I know that is what they will say, and I will tell you the only two people that can really answer that question will be Marshall or Colleen. Frank would not know that.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know that because I don't know that surveillance system.
Right.
Tanya has left.
Right.
Tanya is gone. So the only two people that could defend that particular question would be Marshall or Colleen.
Okay.
And that's all I can say.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Now, on the runs, you supplied SAS programs. You supplied a lot of different SAS programs to me.
Yep.
And I haven't tried to see if they'll run on SAS Enterprise Edition. I need to try that. But I was wondering, did you save any of your SAS output?
Yeah, I have SAS output, but I only kept SAS output for the near final programs after we had, you know, gone through 6 to 9 months of this, sorting through the results. So the only documentation I have are those Excel spreadsheets that list out all these findings over time.
Okay, but you don't have like the SAS listing file or?
Nah, nope.
No, okay, I understand. So you've got what was in the output is in the spreadsheets.
Every time we met, which was, you know, every time we met, I would create a new Excel spreadsheet, and I would put in the new results in that Excel spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would meet and we would discuss them. Then I would go back and run more analysis.
Right. Now going back to when the DeStefano study was first initiated, was race a big factor? Because essentially what appears in the final publication is that race in general is downplayed.
Of course it is.
Right. Right, it's downplayed. But was that a major objective? And you know, if you can show me what was planned in terms of the SAS runs, that's going to answer that question. But when you had the discussion, you know, I think of metropolitan Atlanta, and I think, okay, this is a great place to get African Americans because there's more African Americans that live in Atlanta than live in like Redding, California.
Right. It would be the perfect city to do it, but as you can tell from the sample, and I think this is in general true at the time, and it's still true, is that whites get diagnosed from that system that still exists and that we still publish, you know, the prevalence rates from. Whites get diagnosed with autism at 2 times the rate of blacks. Mm-hmm. So in 1996, when that was done, you know, that's before the big explosion.
Right.
So,
I mean, whites are getting diagnosed twice as much as blacks. There's not enough data really to do like a socioeconomic breakdown on that.
Well, you can. I mean, you can. Well, did we include? No, I don't think we didn't have.
No. I think there's like maternal education might be there.
Well, sorry, this is the reason is they were getting the records from the schools and from the clinic.
Right.
So you don't have the socio-demographic data in there.
Okay.
So
okay.
that brings up another interesting point, which I never even thought of. That's amazing. Because, the thimerosal studies, it was so important to get education and income because there's a reverse association if you don't adjust for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, in fact, you could argue that the stuff in those papers is like a bunch of crap because the better educated moms get their kids vaccinated earlier. So if we didn't adjust for that variable, you could argue from the other two studies, we had a crap study because we weren't even adjusting for the appropriate variables.
Right,
right.
How would that play out? How would that play out? Better educated moms, then if we do that, then basically what we're saying is probably the level of education in the African American community for moms is going to be lower, and so therefore they're probably going to get vaccinated later.
Right. And in fact, what this was suggesting is that among the blacks, the ones that were getting vaccinated earlier were more likely to have autism. Now, the way that would play out, if you thought of this bias, you would say the ones getting vaccinated earlier are the ones from higher income backgrounds, and therefore if you just wanted to assume that bias was real, then you could argue that it's the educated black moms that are getting their kids vaccinated earlier, and that's why you found that effect.
And they're getting that effect, and the ones that are getting vaccinated later are underdiagnosed.
Yes.
Okay, and remembering that this was.
But this is 1996, so.
1996, so the level, you didn't get early diagnoses then. The age cutoff was like between 6 and 13 years of age, so I felt pretty comfortable using the full cohort. I didn't feel like, I need to exclude anybody because the average age of autism diagnosis. But still, I can see that, that being a point that could be argued.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
I didn't even think of that till just now.
Right. Well, it does kind of play backwards in terms of, those kids that got vaccinated later, then you would expect less healthcare seeking behavior, so they would be less likely overall to get an autism diagnosis.
Yep.
But if you had the maternal education, then you could correct for that.
Right. But
I don't think I have it.
You could argue the most important confounder was not included in that study, so why would you even consider the results valid?
Valid, right. You can't say either way.
Exactly.
Essentially,
Yep.
You can't.
And you can use the other two studies to make that argument.
Well, but it's interesting, because we don't see an effect whatsoever in whites. I mean, you take African Americans out of the mix, so you don't see the effect in non-blacks. Period.
Yeah, I actually think the most interesting results are the elevated ones for the isolated ones that don't have other comorbid conditions.
Right.
So what I think is interesting, because I've always believed that you would most likely find, if you could find an effect, you would find it among the ones without mental retardation, because those are the ones where the results would be more sensitive. The kids without other comorbid conditions would be more likely to have something due to some exposure versus something that's just biological.
Right. So something biological, then you would expect comorbidities.
Well, the kids with mental retardation,
Right.
it's probably unlikely that mercury exposure causes mental retardation.
How well, though, if you've got, and you, like you said before, you're not really the person to answer this, but how well do you have those records? Because a lot of times, if you have an isolated autism case, you're going to have mental retardation. I don't know. I'm out in the community. I don't really know many autistic kids that aren't mentally retarded.
Oh, I don't know. I actually don't know that for sure, but my reading of our own papers, the recent papers, is there's a huge increase in the number of kids who don't have mental retardation. That number is proportionately going up.
Right.
So I still,
but that could be part of that could be a healthcare seeking behavior, because if it's in vogue to get an autism, and I deal with this as a parent all the time. Some genius walks up and tries to have a conversation with my kid, and I'll look at the parent and say, oh, my son has autism, he's nonverbal, he doesn't speak, and they'll look at me and they'll say, yeah, my kid has autism too, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Really? I wish we should be so lucky to have that kind of autism.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what type of autism your son had, so many forms of retardation have a strong biological basis based on some, prenatal insult or genetic predisposition.
Sure.
So I would just assume, and I may be assuming wrong, that if you have mental retardation, it's less likely going to be due to an environmental exposure.
Right.
That the environmental exposures are going to cause more subtle effects.
Right.
This is my assumption, but I'm not, again, don't, I
understand. You're not familiar with where that particular data set. I mean, you use the data, but you didn't collect.
Let me give you an example. What makes sense to me is that you would see something similar to the mercury fish exposure. You would see a couple of points decline in IQ, but you wouldn't assume that it'd be a 15-point decline on average, which would, put a lot of people into the mental retardation category. But 3 or 4 IQ points, I could see that, and that's essentially what lead does. Lead, decreases your lead exposure, decreases your IQ by like 3 or 4 points.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. This is making sense. Now, okay, I want to switch gears here really quick. Going to the seed data.
Yeah.
How, from my conversation I had with you back at the end of May, you have access to seed data, right? Today you cleaned it up. You actually cleaned it up after Diana Shin left, and so you have access to that database.
I have direct access to that data.
Okay. So if I got a scientist that I would assume is trusted, it would never be me in my wildest dreams. As much as I would love to get into the seed database, I'm not even going to think about it. In fact, I did request access to the public use data sets people, and they referred me to the state of Georgia seed site. So I looked at the response and laughed, and I thought, okay, this is what I expected. But if I had another trusted scientist, somebody like Kathy DeSoto, for example, she's, there's others. Is there a way to get them on the seed team You know, you had said, yeah, I could talk to Posey about it, and I have to talk to one of Posey's staffers. But is that team pre-assembled, or?
Well, here's the deal, and I've been having a lot of discussions about this, and it seems like I've sparked a conversation, which I'm very happy about. So there's the project officer who just does all the contract stuff for the study.
Right.
And she came into my office today, and she said, I heard you told Marshall Lynn that you think someone outside should do the vaccine studies. So it sounds like Marshall Lynn is trying to move forward on that idea.
Oh, wow.
But, I think what Marshall Lynn wants is one of the principal investigators from one of the sites to take the lead. But as I told her, I said, you should include outside groups with opposing viewpoints. I'm like, the CDC shouldn't be involved at all. Bring in outside people and let them be involved. Anyway, so it's really, I'm having this debate as we speak about whether this system is an open system or a closed system, because I keep saying if it's a closed system, then Diana Schendel shouldn't be allowed to be co-authors on papers anymore. If it's an open system, then anyone should be allowed to use the data.
Right, regardless of what they published in the past in terms of, well, I mean, regardless of their good peer-reviewed science that they published in the past. I'm not suggesting that we get Joe Schmo who is inflammatory, but good scientists.
Yeah, but I can I can promise you, if you apply political pressure, things can happen.
Okay.
And I promise you it will happen. If you make Posey aware of that this is the largest case control study in the world right now with objectively identified autism cases and all the exposures, including vaccines,
right,
and prenatal vaccines,
right.
It's sitting there for the taking.
Okay, Disney for this question. So
it is Disney on steroids relative to prenatal.
Right. Well, what would happen? Okay, so let me play this out. My paper gets published. My MMR paper gets published. I get heavily criticized because I haven't corrected for socioeconomic factors or maternal education. Yeah, I'll take my hits, and then eventually it gets published. And then there's a piece of information that I receive from the CDC, but I don't source. Is that going to be a red flag?
Say it again. If you do
There's
what?
a piece of information. I have a piece of information saying that the CDC got this result, and the CDC got this result on November 7th, 2001.
Right.
And then what they did was they took the cohort and they looked only at birth certificates or those individuals with Georgia birth certificates, and that obviated that particular result. Okay, and so I report that. Now,
all right, so I have one question for you. Why are you using that particular date?
Because that's the earliest date. That's the earliest date that the African American effect was seen.
For some reason, I don't think it was seen that early. But if I sent you a document that has that date, then that's the date.
It's in there. It was November 7th, 2001. Yeah, it's in there.
All right.
So, but
I didn't think I documented it that early. I thought it was several months later, but that's fine.
Okay.
So, but just say, if someone asks, just say you got it from Posey's office.
Well, yeah. Well, you turned it over to Posey's office, right? I mean, you turned it over to people who were going to turn it over to Posey's office.
No, I know, but I have no idea what they gave to Posey. And as you have been seeing from the emails I've been seeing, they're coming up with every reason not to provide anything.
Right.
A recent email suggested to me that they provided nothing previously on this MMR autism study. So, right now I'm topping all those documents that any documents I send to you, I'm turning into PDFs, and they're all going to be PDFs, and I'm going to provide them as part of this request, and I'm going to make it very clear that that these were provided because I have indications that they may not have provided everything this last time around. So I'm trying to do everything I can to get it out the door. So anyways, I would just, if you get asked, I would just say, we got to
Well,
I'm just trying to get comfortable with everything I've shared with you. I can share with you.
Right.
I don't take a stand on anything. And you have what you have, and you're going to do what you're going to do with it.
Right.
And, you know, I've tried to share with you as much information as possible. And, you know, if you say you spoke to me, I promise you everyone will paint me out to be the bad guy, and they'll dig up all this type of stuff, and I'll become the story about why I'm the next Brian Hooker and can't be listened to.
Yeah, I see. This is, you know, in thinking about history and posterity and all that type of stuff, I can't foresee doing that to you.
No. I'm just saying, I'm just playing it out. Like,
right.
If played out, I would just become the next Brian Hooker. I would be the next scapegoat for the drug companies.
What about those inside that are sympathetic with you? I mean, do they exist?
I don't think there's anyone sympathetic inside to what I am doing or what I have. You know, my position is one that the drug companies will jump all over. I mean,
sure.
They right now they feel like they have you pretty isolated as an extremist. So, you know.
Yeah, I know. I checked my Wikipedia entry the other day, and I saw what an extremist I was. I actually had to become a member of Wikipedia so I could edit what was said about me.
You got to do that too, and it's going to happen. But just so you know, so in the short term, I'm not going to leave the federal government. I don't think, based on everything I know right now, I don't think I've broken a single law.
No.
Nothing I shared with you was classified. Nothing I shared with you was privileged information in any way. And if anything, you know, people on that have been my supervisors have broken laws, but I'm not going to be the judge of that. So.
Why not? I'm sorry. That I meant to put you on the spot. If you feel on the spot, mission accomplished. But if they're doing things that are illegal that are hurting children, I mean.
I know, but
But I understand the quandary if you can't prove it. I mean, if you can't prove it, you can't prove it, and you can't go on record because they're going to make you look like shit.
No, it's going to turn into hearsay. It's going to be my opinion versus 4 other co-authors. And the 4 other co-authors have a lot of support from the rest of the CDC. There is no one that would come to my defense. The rest of them are all senior-level people, and everyone would rally around them and try and figure a way out. And they would figure a way out. That's the deal. That's what I keep seeing again and again and again. And I've been involved in a separate situation unrelated to this where these senior people just do completely unethical, vile things, and no one holds them accountable.
Does it have to do with vaccine safety, or?
No. This is completely unrelated. Nothing.
Unrelated. Okay. I'm not going to pursue it then. Because it's not. This is not isolated to DiStefano et al. 2004. I mean, I've got all the records. I see that on the New England Journal of Medicine paper, you were pressured to downplay the relationship between thimerosal and ticks.
Well, let me just say this. I did a follow-up study because I wanted my opinion on the record.
Right.
I talked to a graduate student outside the CDC to analyze the data, so it wouldn't even be me who was leading it.
Right.
And then I went through this process where that paper was in clearance for a year, and where I was asked to bring a co-author on in the middle of clearance, which is one of the most...
Right, the guy from Rochester, yeah.
Yeah. So the point is the point is, well, here's where I think, and it's almost impossible to prove because I've already heard people respond to it, but I've said things like, why didn't you guys follow up on the significant thimerosal effect? And it went into the NBPO plan. They spent almost 2 years writing the plan on what they would follow up on. They were supposed to follow up on ticks, and they never did a single additional study on ticks. So they were supposed to follow up on that. That's the one thing I wanted to see if they would follow up on, and they never did.
See, the NBPO is like Fort Knox when it comes to FOIA.
No, I know, but the bigger problem is they're not actually following up on things they say they're going to follow up on.
Right. See, there was a concerted effort not to look at it, because if they were going to follow up on it, then that would have been as part of the 2011 IOM and the 2013 IOM, and they didn't look at the thimerosal whatsoever. They were just like, okay, you know what? If we don't talk about this, then the final word will be 2004, and you know, they said the thimerosal doesn't cause autism, and that's the end of it.
I know, but they, like I said, they never say thimerosal doesn't cause ticks.
Right. Which we do have a plan for, by the way. I mean, there will be you'll see something out in the press hopefully by the end of this month.
Okay, good. Because that should be your mantra. That should be your mantra.
That is our mantra. It's been very, very, you know, difficult to get through, but yes, it is our mantra. The thing that the medical community it seems to think that on the developmental disability scale that ticks are you know, bottom feeders. That's like, oh, no big deal. No big deal.
No, I know. The question is, what is it linked to? What is it representative of?
Right.
So it's the canary, you know, in the coal mine is what it is. It's a manifestation of an exposure that may have had a lot of other effects, such as verbal learning problems, which were also found in several studies.
Right. And that's, yeah, I found a study that basically said that there were LD comorbidities in 76% of the cases of tics. So right. There was ADHD, ADD, behavioral regulation, speech and language delay, and autism.
Which I was very impressed you dug up that one tick and mercury exposure thing. I'd never seen that. That was
it was methyl mercury in a Chinese herbal spray.
Yep.
So it was very interesting. And then as the blood mercury levels dropped, then they saw the ticks subside.
Right. I mean, I think that's a wonderful demonstration. I was going to ask you this. So there were a couple interesting rat studies that I read a while ago. And one of the studies that was interesting is that they were trying to find the toxic level of thimerosal to see how they would do a study. And I've never seen anyone replicate it, but I thought it was a really interesting study and it could be replicated really easily. So they took male and female rats and were trying to find out the toxic dose that would essentially kill them before they lowered the dose to see the effect of thimerosal. Well, in this one study that is in the literature, all the males died and the females didn't. So they got to a certain level and all the male rats died. So to me, again, it showed that thimerosal had a differential effect on males and females, which would be consistent with whatever mechanism
with a lot of LD, not just autism, but with a lot of LD. So
yeah. Okay. It was fascinating.
Can you send me the reference for that?
I can try and dig it up. I'm sure I can find it again. But
okay. Yeah, I appreciate it. So But getting back to these, you had our favorite person, Tanya Popovic.
Yep. She resigned. No one will say whether she really resigned or not. Did she resign?
I don't know. I'm supposed to get a lion's share. That was part of my Posey request.
Yeah.
Was to get all of her emails that had anything that said Marisol or autism.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get it in there really quick because I thought, I have a 2-week window and all those emails will just be down the drain.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
So there was when that. How does it work? I mean, is it an issue when it goes through clearance, or that it gets bounced back, or
that what gets bounced back?
That if they see an effect, that then they will bounce it back to you during the clearance process, or I'm not if for example what you said for the Burrell paper, that it was in clearance and then they wanted you to get this second author or this additional author.
It was a very, very, very rare. I've never seen it happen before. So that's the first time I've ever seen something like that happen before. But they had no knowledge that this was coming through versus the two thimerosal studies. Those people knew about the results 2 years before it went into clearance.
Mm-hmm.
Almost, I would say every study that has ever come out of immunization safety, the people above know if there's a significant finding, they know months in advance of it going into clearance. So my paper I put into clearance without them knowing anything about it. And it caught people off guard, and then we went through the process we went through, which was a slow, laborious, but I kept pounding away. They kept watering it down. They watered it down. Then we sent it out to the journals, and the journals were just like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
You're not even talking about the significant finding you found.
Right. The 3 reviewers, that page on that PowerPoint presentation, that's dynamic. I mean, it's just that's radioactive.
Yeah.
And it's such an indictment.
Yeah, it's an indictment of the whole process.
Right.
Yes.
So did you feel in the 2007 paper that you were pressured to downplay significant results?
No, because in both those cases, APT had the results and they presented them to. I mean, myself and Sally Bernard saw the results for the first time at the same time.
She is.
Right? So that's why she was on the panel, but she was sort of the token representative of the anti-vaccine contingent.
Mm-hmm. Contingent, right.
So she was supposed to represent that contingent, and when they presented the results to me, I was seeing them at the same time she was. We were all shitting in our pants. Those two studies, we did not know what we were going to see when we showed up into the room.
Right.
I was very happy about that. I was happy that we wouldn't be able to spin it, that it was put on the table and Sally could walk away with a handout of the results. And I don't think she released the results to the public until after it was published.
No, she didn't. So and I was trying to get the results. I wasn't getting them from her. I was trying to get them from the FOIA, but no, those weren't released, and understandably so. I mean, looking at the FOIA exemptions, I understand why, and it wouldn't be defensible. I couldn't go to court to get those results prior to publication. They would be considered pre-decisional.
Right.
So
anyways, and so it just, it's I don't know how we got on that topic.
Oh, that's all right. I'm sorry. That was me. I drove you over there. Sorry.
There was nothing, to answer your question, there was no pressure on those two studies because essentially APT handed us a book of results and then we wrote up a paper based on that book, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all show up in the room. everyone gets handed a book. The book is the book, and then we write up the papers. It was like the most straightforward thing in the world because everyone agreed up front what the analyses would be. A book comes in, it has everything, and then we write it up and publish it. It was just very different from this other process where we spent, where we we were just wandering. I mean, and then when I find out what was going on in the background with these other studies with Diana Schendel, I'm like, oh, so that's, we're wandering while she's money laundering with the person that's, the landmark study that dismisses any association.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, she spent the summer in Denmark the year she published that study.
Which one are you referring to? I'm sorry, I should know this.
Her 2003 and 2004 papers.
Oh, Madsen 2000. She spent the summer for Madsen 2003?
She took a summer and essentially vacationed in Denmark. I'm sure she said she was working, but
I could tell you stories about that study. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It is, they cherry pick data. Madsen is, it's so fatally flawed.
Yeah.
With the changing diagnostic criteria, the inclusion criteria regarding clinics, the inpatient versus outpatient. I mean, It's such a mess.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, while I'm, while I'm defending a dissertation on a weekly basis, she's out in Denmark money laundering.
Party. Yes, with party at Thorson's house. Okay.
Sitting at the seaside with
Thorson,
his Harley, and his second house in Atlanta.
Did you, going back to Thompson, was maternal education and that was a covariate, right, in that one, right?
Yeah.
And maternal age.
Yep.
Okay. Are those strong covariates? Do you remember?
Yes, they were very strong.
They were very strong. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I'm just wondering, though, the majority of the metrics, though, were tested. They were tested, interviewed by, folks that were employed by apt associates.
They were all brought in for 3-hour neuropsychologically test study. A group of master's level trained folks were all taught in a standardized way to give a full neuropsych test battery. So the kids were brought in for 3 hours at the 3 or the 4 different HMOs that participated, and the family was invited in. The kid would be given a 3-hour test, sat down and give them IQ tests and all that type of stuff.
Sure.
And the mother was given a short, just quick IQ test that we used as a covariate, and I'm telling you, it was very labor intensive, and that study was done really well.
Right.
Yep.
Right. It and Baril 2012 stand alone.
Well, they were as good as you could do. I will say, in hindsight, I think it was a big mistake to wait till they were 7 years old to test them, because again, mercury exposure, there's other things, you and I have talked about this, there's other things that could come in. People with financial resources could bring in things to essentially ameliorate any deficits that might have occurred.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, the socioeconomic status is going to work for healthcare seeking behavior is a moot point because you're testing everybody, you're leveling the playing field.
Yep.
But socioeconomic factors could weigh in otherwise in test scores.
Yeah, between birth and 7 years. So,
right.
Of course, if I was going to redo it, I would have done it at 3 years of age or 4 years of age.
That makes sense.
At that point, that would probably be the earliest point you'd start seeing deficits show up, and it would be before you'd get a lot of early intervention education stuff that people with resources could do.
Sure, that makes sense. So, you weren't involved in Verstraeten in 2003 at all, were you?
No.
He laughed. Yes.
There was a circus. There was a total circus, and then he goes to the IOM, says
right.
at the beginning of this presentation that he's going to work for a drug company. I mean, that was as dark as Julie Gilberting going to work for Merck Vaccine. I mean, it was just
right.
That's pissed me off more than him doing that.
I'm sorry?
Nothing pissed me off more than him doing that at the IOM meeting, saying, I now work for a drug manufacturer.
Yeah. He basically resigned on stage.
It was a total slap in the face. It's just like, how insulting would that be to these people who are looking for an unbiased viewpoint?
Right. It had a dramatic killing effect. Let's put it that way.
Well, I wouldn't believe another word coming out of someone's mouth who on stage says, "Oh, and today I accepted a job with a drug manufacturer."
Yeah. No. He was done. As soon as he said that, he was done. You're right. You're absolutely right. But so just to how. Okay. You and I are in agreement. Vaccine safety should not be in the CDC.
Absolutely.
So how do you see this all ending? I mean, how would this end? I mean, and how?
Right. It would end this way, that you would end up with an agency like the National Transportation Safety Board. You know, there's the FAA, and then there's the NTSB. The FAA is, responsible for, regulating, all sorts of things. But then when an accident happens, you bring in the NTSB. So you would have the equivalent of an NTSB-like organization that would do vaccine safety studies independently.
Right.
And but here's
but how do we get there? I mean, my fundamental question is, how do we get there? We are here now. How do we get there? I mean, without shrapnel, preferably.
Well, I'm becoming skeptical of these things as I look at it over time, because I look at the Environmental Protection Agency,
right,
and it seems like they're being watered down. They're being less and less effective. So I just think the trend right now is towards not allowing the government to say anything negative about any industry. So
right. What's going on in the USDA with the Monsanto Protection Act?
Yeah.
Trust me, I genetically modify plants for a living. That's what I did. That's how I cut my teeth on my research post essentially my what would be referred to as my postdoc years at the National Laboratory. Was you don't want to eat GM food. You don't want to eat Roundup Ready anything. And because Monsanto is now the insider, they're the government insiders, and the environment is getting increasingly hostile for those that would speak out, within the government, that would speak out against the government.
Yes, exactly. So that seems to be the trend. So I just don't think the time is right now, or you're not going to get a lot of, believe it or not, when Bob Chen was the branch chief in immunization safety, he was the one that was pushing really hard to get immunization safety moved out of the CDC. I think he actually almost succeeded, but then they reprimanded him, and slapped him around and
transferred him.
yeah, and then moved him out.
Right.
So I just think the current environment in the federal government, and you know this because you were in the federal government, the current environment is hostile to anyone who says anything negative about any industry. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how you get independent studies. What I want to say is the NIH should be funding all the studies is what I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm beginning not to trust the NIH with vaccine studies.
Sure,
you know?
sure. It's some of the comments that Tom Insel made. You know, he had a preconceived notion of how his quote unquote vaccine safety study that he was working on, his vax-unvax study, was going to come out. I mean, it's very, very clear.
Have you heard any more about that? Have you asked anyone about that study?
I haven't heard any. I have not for lack of trying. I haven't heard anything about that study. I may Lynn Redwood, although because she's on IAC and she might know.
Yeah.
So I may call her.
I mean, I asked Marsha Lynn, and Marsha Lynn didn't know.
No, I'm not sure who is doing what. But if it's anything like that, you know, that one meta-analysis that came out of Australia, good luck. You know?
Oh God, that meta-analysis was the saddest paper I've ever seen written. The amount of press that piece of crap paper got was so depressing.
Right.
It was mind-numbing to think how much press that got, which described it as the nail in the coffin. Anyway.
That's it, man. It's late.
Have a good night.
Alrighty. Hey, thanks a bunch, Bill. We'll talk to you soon.
That's right.
Bye-bye. Have a great vacation. Anyhow, I'll tell you what, the reason why I wanted to talk to you is that I have been in ICE's office.
Yep.
And I've seen your handiwork. I've seen...
We're part of it. We're part of it. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, it's all yours. It's all yours. I knew it was all yours. See, I had seen some earlier stuff, but ICE's staff had to redact the personal information, and yours took the longest. So I saw everything that you had, everything from the letter C to the letter Z is what they had. Now, they are not releasing this to me. They are letting me see it and transcribe it by hand.
Yep.
So I'm trying to work behind the scenes with their office and with Posey to get them to release this. And there may be
so great. It would be so great if you could get them to release everything. I'm just telling you that, because it would take me off the hook. Then everything would be off of me, because then the records would be public, and then I could discuss them more.
Well, let me. I will let you know how that goes, because the clearest legal pathway is if they release them, and there's some issues. There's some procedural issues with whether a committee chair like Aisha can release those files directly. But I've told him, and I said, look, if you can release him to Posey doesn't have the same restrictions because he's not a committee chair. So anyhow, I'll keep on pursuing those avenues. There's got to be. I would not be surprised if you turned over 20,000 pages worth of documents, because I didn't get through. I didn't even touch them. I mean, I skimmed.
I'm telling you, I think I provided 100,000 pages. So, that's why when you say you went through that many.
Well, mine's a wag. I mean, I'm probably lowballing it. I know that there are some things that I have seen that were not in the documents that were in ICE's office. So that was a little interesting. So obviously some things aren't making it through the filter, but
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that's true.
Yeah, yeah. But I wanted to go to Bareil.
Bareil, Jack Bareil.
Is it Bareil? Is it Bareil? I can never pronounce that right. Bareil. Okay.
So speaking of, these are the type of things. Whether you want to think they're coincidence or not, he actually I actually had coffee with him this afternoon. He was here.
No way.
Hawaii.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, anyways, he's a great guy. He's a really young guy, and a very new. Actually, when we did that thimerosal paper, he was still in graduate school.
Yeah, I bet he has a great tan.
He does. He looks bad.
Well, I got to say that I'm from California. So, so anyhow, what I saw was I saw some of the original versions of the Bareil manuscript, and I'm going to read some excerpts from the original if you can humor me. And it said, in light of these findings, the researchers conclude that the greater exposure to thimerosal from vaccines is potentially associated with an increased risk for the presence of tics in boys between ages 7 to 10.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think that made it into the final manuscript. I mean, how did CDC react to this statement?
All right, did I tell you the story about this paper?
No, well, you told me that they hired the tics guy, that you got this guy from Rochester. Yeah. Are you there? Okay, kind of breaking up. I'm sorry. Are you still there? Let me check my connection, Bill. It might be me. Hold on. No, I'm getting good connection. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm going to go outside just to make sure I have the best connection. Just a second.
Okay, no problem. All righty.
Just a sec. Okay, this paper was the longest paper in clearance I've ever had. So it was in clearance for a year. And there's a really interesting story about this. So Gabe Coopermink, one of the other authors on the paper.
Right.
Gabe and I went to graduate school together.
Oh, no way.
And,
he was John Bareil's advisor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Gabe and I knew each other. And, Gabe said he had this great graduate student. I said, great. I want to talk with you guys about a study I want to do. And I said, I promise you this isn't going to be easy, but I promise you it's going to be interesting.
Right. Good.
So I told Jack he was going to be first author. I said, because you guys are outside the CDC, we'll have more leverage because, you will have fewer constraints than I will. And I actually said, if it gets really crazy, I'm willing to, drop off as a co-author and let you guys just publish this because this is the public use data set.
Okay.
So anyways, we did the whole thing. We wrote the manuscript. We initially had pretty, strong wording like what you're saying.
Right.
About the association, and then it sat in clearance for a year, and people just hammered away at the paper and watered it down more and more and more. So you got the manuscript you ended up with, which is the published manuscript. I mean, not the published. You ended up with the final cleared manuscript was just, the most, whitewashed discussion ever. And then we got those reviews, and we were just thrilled with the reviews. We were like, this is great. Now we can bring back in our original text.
Right.
So,
yeah, I have one of the whitewashed comments. It said,
despite the significant association between thimerosal exposure and early life and the presence of tics in boys aged 7 through 10 years, we think that thimerosal is not a major causal agent for tic disorder for several reasons. First, the magnitude of the potential contribution from early thimerosal exposure in the present study is small. I didn't get that. I mean, was that referring to the risk ratios or the odds ratios, or I wasn't sure?
Well, there's, for a linear regression model, I'd call them beta coefficients. So the beta coefficients were, I mean, I'll give you my perspective. Any effect you find for any analysis like this is going to be small.
Okay.
And I really do believe any analysis like this, if we found something, it's not going to explain the huge increase in,
Sure.
autism cases or things like that.
Right,
So,
right. No, I understand.
So whatever we found could explain, a percentage of it. But I'd have to see the actual draft you're looking at. So are you reading a comment that one of the reviewers made?
No, this was, I don't know if this was from the final paper or if it was from a severely revised manuscript that then went out to publication. I couldn't really tell.
Yeah.
I haven't cross-referenced this with the final paper.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. All I have to tell you is we wrote a pretty strong discussion presented in the clearance. I knew they would whitewash it, and then we got these wonderful reviews, which was, it was like a reality check for me.
Right. I've seen those reviews. I got those in documents from Posey, actually. So, and it was good. I mean, it was an eye opener. I hope it was helpful.
Oh, it was 3 independent opinions, right? 3
Right.
people who had no vested interest in the outcome other than to say, why aren't you talking about the significant results in the paper?
Right, right. It's just, and it goes on. And if I can ask, I have a quote, I have an email from, this was to you, and it's not concerning the Burrell paper, but your original, the Thompson 2007 paper. This is from Nancy Levine, and
Yeah.
she's looking and she says, Bill, I think this document still needs language clarifying that the tick finding, even though it's statistically significant and repeat the finding from previous studies, is something you would normally find in this population. Well, they're kids, but I don't get that. I'm also concerned about
and Nancy Levine is not a scientist, so
well, why is
that's
she saying
even
this?
crazier. That's even crazier.
I mean, my first question is, who the hell is Nancy Levine?
She's not a scientist. She's like an admin person. She's so I'm just wondering if you're reading it right. I'm wondering if she might have forwarded someone's comment.
Oh, so okay. No,
it would be really surprising for her to make a comment like that, but she might have. But that's what I mean. These are the type of people. She's a policy person. I think she calls herself a policy person, but I can't remember. But I mean, she knows nothing about science. That's all I'll say.
Right, right. Well, I was pretty sure because she referred to. I'm also concerned about saying that this finding should be studied further. I thought that was a travesty. Of course, it should be studied further.
Of course, it should be.
And
of course it should be.
I'm not sure we want to say this or do this, but I'll leave it up to you and Ed, and that's Ed Trevathan. Is that how you say his name?
Ed Trevathan, who was the center director at the time.
Okay. So
National
that
Center for
gives
Birth Defects Center director. Yeah.
So if indeed these were her words, she was way out on a limb because she's not a scientist.
Completely.
Okay. And now on your 2007 paper, was it submitted to Journal of American Medical Association, or did it just go directly to New England Journal of Medicine? I thought it had gone directly to New England Journal.
I thought it went straight to New England Journal, but it might have gone to JAMA first. I can't remember.
Okay. I
I
couldn't
think it was
find
the
any.
New England. I mean, we all think the New England Journal is a much better paper. So I mean, a place
A
to
journal.
publish. So I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
I just
I
saw
don't know.
something. It was just a hint of something that I saw.
I mean, we might have been talking about which journal to submit it to.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I can. That's not. That wouldn't be hard to find. I'm 90. No, we sent it to the New England Journal. We didn't send it to JAMA.
Okay. Oh, let me make a note here. Okay, that's what I thought, because it's a good paper. It got good reviews, and and the conclusion still stands. Now, I went back. I mean, this whole thing, I really
Which reminds me, I want to talk about the Verstraeten paper after we talk about this, because I have something really interesting to say to you.
Okay,
So
okay, that would be great. But I went back to Tozy.
Yeah.
Because it looked like, and this I know, Tozy was rejected by New England Journal of Medicine first. And there was a whole the Tozy, Alberto Tozy's paper.
Oh, Tozy. I thought you were saying Posey, the congressman.
No,
I'm like, what?
no,
Okay.
he's not. Yeah,
Tozy.
Yes.
I think they call him Tozy. Yeah, Tozy.
Okay.
Alberto. Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
now,
he's got rejected by New England Journal and JAMA.
okay, I thought I saw something that said JAMA as well. I'm going to write that down. But what I did, I went ahead and I looked at his results for ticks. And we've talked about this before. And so I just did a really simple student's t-test.
Yes.
Because we have the mean, the standard deviation, and the number.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
They're statistically different.
I know. I'm telling you. I know. That's why I wanted you to look at it.
Motor ticks and phonics. Thank you so much, because they are statistically completely different.
I know.
Now, the only thing is odd. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But it really wasn't analyzed correctly, but I never went and did what you did, but I was looking at it, and I was like, I wish I had done it, but I wanted you to look at it because I thought those raw numbers would be statistically significant. Just the numbers right in that table. So you have confirmed what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
It was. I haven't done males and females segregated yet. But overall, there is a statistically significant difference both in motor and phonic tics and so it confirms.
But that's why you got to get the raw data. You can get the raw data if you guys put pressure on these guys. So. Anyway, and speaking of, Nancy Levine was poking her head around trying to find out where the Italian data was. They were trying to find it and see if they could get it. But
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so Nancy Levine is this policy person, and when you started requesting the data sets, I sent an email to Frank DiStefano and said, why don't we get the Italy data? That would be great to have because X, Y, and Z. He had replied back he didn't think we could get it. So
how did with David Shea? I saw an email between you and him. It said, "Hey, sorry to bother you. I'm trying to pull together everything I've sent to Alberto et al. You don't want to know why." So that piqued my interest. Can you recall when you sent me, and can you find your original edits to the Samirazal draft we got from Alberto on December, early January of this year? What was where they were funded by CC, right?
Yeah, completely.
Okay. Who was the project manager on that? Was there a project? Did they have project oversight, or was it just a grant?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, so this is where you just got to understand the transition. So David Shea was the project officer.
Okay.
I was really the person who was doing all the work because I designed our neurodevelopment study, and we basically had Alberto do the exact same thing. So we had Alberto take every instrument he could find and do it in Italian or whatever they wanted to do it in, And he basically replicated our design. So I spent a lot of time with Alberto. Now, David Shea is a pediatrician, and
Right.
you know, he sat back and listened a lot. And but he was technically the project officer. He was also the team lead at that point.
Right.
Now, as I've told you, he resigned in November of 2003.
Right.
And went back to the flu division. And then I think he tried to stay on as the project officer, but Frank took over. Now, Frank is an Italian, and he owned property in Italy for a long time. So there was a long-term relationship with him and Alberto. So anyway, we funded the whole thing. They'll probably say, if you pushed it, they would probably say it was jointly funded.
Sure.
But I believe the only grant money they had was from us.
Okay.
And it is, understand my position. This was the best study of all of them, is the first thing I want to say. Second, it had a larger sample size than our New England Journal paper. Third, there was true random assignment. And, and three, it also found a language effect. So it found the tick effect and the language effect. So there were two effects that were replicated. I mean, if you believe the tick effects were significant, which it blew my mind when, you know, the paper disappeared. The results disappeared for several years before I finally saw a draft. And that's why I think that email that you saw was me, like, trying to figure out what happened to everything we saw originally. It was like, what the heck happened? How did it change so much? Because I was really thrilled that it looked like we had something that had replicated. But anyway.
But it was very interesting because, and the reason why I keyed in on this is then I saw, I think it was a letter, I want to say it was from Melinda Wharton or somebody in the ISO, and it was to a pediatrician who was very concerned about thimerosal and ticks. And in this letter, she went on to say, oh, well, we didn't see a consistent association in ticks because we did this Italian study by Tozzi et al., and they did not see an association with ticks. And then she was talking about speech delay and how there were several studies that didn't see a consistent association across the board. And once I did my analysis, I was like, bullshit. Come on.
Yeah, it's total bullshit. And no, I know, but both of them, you have to realize, I worked with someone who worked closely, and I just have to tell you, I do not care for Larry Pickering. Larry Pickering, I can tell you story after story about why that guy is, I don't want to disparage him, but I would just say I don't think highly of him. But I had a go-between between Larry and I, and we went back and forth on what should go on the NVPO list of things to follow up on. And if you notice or know what that list is, it was ticks and language delay. So those were the two things that went on.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So NVPO put it into what the CDC was supposed to follow up on, and the CDC never followed up on it. So it went into a national strategic plan for vaccine safety. And that's what frustrated the hell out of me, is they never did an additional study after that.
Right. I did see there was one thing, I couldn't find the date on it. It was ISO's response regarding recommendation 19 for ticks, and there was, some odd number of recommendations. Assessing whether thimerosal is associated with clinically important ticks will be a research need for the ISO scientific agenda. ISO confers with NVAC. Now they brought in NVAC's recommendation of a low priority score. And again, I just scratched my head like, well, why would you? I mean, this is the piece with thimerosal that is still left hanging.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was very. So NVP.
But it was still NVAC still had it on its list. All right, so it's on their list, but NVAC and ISO decide for themselves it's a low priority. So a very biased political agenda, made it a low priority and, created a situation that would be difficult to get additional funding for.
Do you think they would ever revisit it? I mean, if we applied pressure and we started publicizing...
Absolutely. No, absolutely. They absolutely would. And I do think you could do more studies, and I have lots of ideas of studies you could do.
Right,
so,
right. I mean, because we want to apply pressure. And this is pressure that we could get somebody like Posey to appear at a press conference and talk specifically about this. I really want the TASI data. You've kind of inspired me to double my efforts in order to get that particular data, because I think it would be very, very useful. And their analysis, they don't really do any types of testing to show that their populations are different outside of mean plus or minus 1 standard deviation.
Yes, and the other thing I was going to say to you about that analysis is, as opposed to the non-experimental studies where you need to adjust for things, you actually shouldn't even, you don't even, from a theoretical basis, you don't need to adjust for anything in that study. So the second thing is they had an unbelievable response rate. They had an 80% response rate from the original study. It was like beyond, it was like your world's greatest dream, and the reason is because most kids in most of those villages don't move, so they're very easy to find.
I'm going to call him. I might as well just. I have not tried that yet. I'll just call Alberto Tozzi directly. Explain. Hopefully he won't think that I'm a demon, like the rest of the CDC. But I'm sure I can get his phone number.
I'm sure you could get his phone number. You can at least email him.
Oh yeah, I've done that. He doesn't respond to the emails. So, but I'm not beyond stalking people. You know that. I'm sorry.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Not that one.
I would say don't do it. No. I would. But I mean, just don't. I'm just saying that if he doesn't respond, you're not going to get him talking to you on the phone.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I'll keep trying other avenues. So now talk to me about Verstraeten. You were getting ready to think about.
Yes. So I was reviewing a paper that was doing a reanalysis of the Verstraeten study, and I reread the Verstraeten article. Mm-hmm. And I was actually talking to Chris Price about this week because I thought this was really interesting. So if you have reread the Verstraeten study lately, you will see in the methods section that for the big, I'm not supposed to say what HMO it is, but for the big HMO, the one with 110,000 subjects. All right. That's the one that had the tick effect, right?
Right.
Right. And it's primarily because they had such a big sample size. So the other HMOs had, I believe, positive effects, but they weren't statistically significant, right?
That's correct. That's both Harvard Pilgrim and the Group Health Northwest or whatever it was didn't have the effect. Right.
So if you looked at that, you would just say, well, they didn't have enough subjects when they did the other two, when they used the other two HMOs. But regardless, what's interesting to me is about other potential effects. And the reason I say that is they have this sentence in there, and I never really understood why they did it, but now I understand why it would significantly reduce the size of the effects. Okay, so if you look in the methods section, it says for NCK, we adjusted for which clinics the people were seen at. Because in some clinics, they said there were higher rates of particular disorders. Now, and I think this is true at this particular HMO, but I'm not positive, okay? If the kids who have, like if you test positive on a screener for any condition, and then that triggers something for you to be sent to one of the Kaiser specialists, right?
Right.
So let's say you appear to have symptoms of autism, and then they say, well, let's send him to the autism clinic to see if he has autism. right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you do that, then you would what you would do is be essentially creating a situation where some clinics look like they have higher autism rates than other clinics.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also be the case, for example, that if you live out 60 miles out of town and the autism specialist is in town, right? You're going to drive in and go and see that person. So if that's true and they adjust for that, they essentially adjust out any possibility for finding an association between the thimerosal and the effect, because what they're basically doing is saying, I'm going to covary out all the variation associated with neurodevelopmental outcomes from specialists,
right?
Where you would get the diagnosis from. I never really quite understood why they did that, and I didn't have the data myself. I couldn't look at the data, but now I'm very suspicious about what that might do with some of the effects. But I don't know. I guess you guys have access. You guys have access to that data, so I might be overstating it, but it would be interesting to look at some of the other effects in addition.
Actually, I don't. I don't personally have the access. I requested a public use data set for verstratin, and they told me to apply to the VSD.
Yeah, you probably have to go into the
and in the VSD right now. See, I tried to get around jumping through all the hoops that the Guyers jumped through to get into the VSD. Because they had to go through all these different IRBs, for each HMO that they were improved for, and it was, time-consuming and expensive. The Guyers are not approved to merge vaccine files, so you can't merge, you can't reconstruct verstratin because you can't come up with a thimerosal dose.
Why?
They for some reason, the way that they worded their proposal, and Peter Meyer, he's different. He may go for it. I have nothing to lose by proposing a VSD study. I mean, I really don't have any. The worst they could say is no, and I would just do a preliminary proposal and see where it went. And because the RDC is very, very different than it was in the early 2000s. It's a much friendlier place.
Well, yeah, when the Guyers went in there was no way they could manipulate the data appropriately just because of the constraints they were under. I mean,
well, and they didn't know SAS. They didn't know anything.
No, I know, but there were many reasons. That was a big mess, both on the CDC end and the Guyer end. But it would very poorly for everyone.
Yeah.
But if you could get access to the data now and look at some of these things, my guess is they put that adjustment in there because they didn't like what they were finding.
I would not doubt it.
They only did it for one HMO.
That's right. Oh, I remember reading that. That for the biggest HMO, they stratified based on clinic.
Yes.
That is, wow, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And see, I always question that because I felt like you were matching out any variability in thimerosal, but I never really thought to question that out in terms of specialty clinics, in terms of specialists.
Yeah. I mean, if it was specialty clinics, then you're completely throwing off the associations because you're basically sucking out all the variance associated with the actual outcome.
Right. You're comparing high with high and high within high, and you can't do that. So that is really. I'm glad you caught that. That's pretty amazing. And it would be interesting to see what the tick outcome again would be. If you could throw off those constraints for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you. I'm looking at my list. I have my bucket list of questions. Okay. Let's see. Talked about Nancy Levine. Talked about David Shea. The MMR paper,
Yeah.
It looked like it was accepted in pediatrics in July of 2003, but it didn't come out until 2004. Is that pretty typical for pediatrics? Does it take that long to get them?
I don't think it's that typical for it to take that long.
Okay. I just thought maybe there was a story there or something. I don't know.
It's a story I don't know, but, Pediatrics, JAMA, and New England Journal have very tight ties with the CDC.
Yeah.
So
It was very,
I don't know.
I will tell you, there was very
You
sparse
can do
information.
this. No, I know,
Okay.
but you could do this. You could email pediatrics and say, what's the average time to publication when a journal gets accepted? Actually, just go look at the journal Pediatrics, because they say when the article was received and then when it was published. So you can just go look at a couple of articles and see what the turnaround time is.
Uh-huh. I wasn't sure maybe if it was a peer review issue but yeah, I'll look for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
because it was very intriguing, because there were in your collection of information that went to ICE's office, there was precious little about the MMR. Everything, thimerosal ticks, thimerosal autism, the Price study, Thompson study, the Burrell study were all there. Nothing about what was there on DiStefano, and so I thought that was pretty interesting. That there was.
Well, the DiStefano, remember, I led all the analyses with the DiStefano thing. Literally, everyone else got rid of all their documents, so the only documents that exist right now from that study are mine.
Right.
And it was the 5 of us. The reason you don't see anything else circulating on the study, it was 5 of us behind closed doors for 2 years.
Wow.
So that is why you don't see anything else.
Right.
But what you do see, if you notice, is when I start getting pissed off that we're about to release some results internally. And I don't know if those documents I think you've seen those. I've sent those to you. So, in October of 2002, I was, starting to share results, and that's when they reprimanded Bob Chen. Actually, it was early September 2002. I was ready to share results, and I have notes that show we were going to even show them earlier. And then I do that early September, and then within 2 weeks, Bob Chen gets reprimanded.
Wow.
And then several weeks later, we get FOIA'd and we get legal people asking for all our documents, and that's where there was an email exchange between Colleen Boyle and I about, I was the only one that had documents. Everyone knew I was the only one that had documents, and I was like, I'm good, and that's why becoming a whistleblower, la-di-da-di-da.
Right, right. Now, I did see that you proposed a thimerosal Alzheimer's study at some point. Whatever happened to that? Did it just not fly?
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem was that, the problem with that is you wouldn't have any people exposed to thimerosal that would be actually find cases of Alzheimer's. So, you have to realize the heavy doses of thimerosal came in the 1990s. So if you followed these people for 50 years, then you could do that.
Right, right. So the VST would not be appropriate to study that.
Well, in 50, in
that time frame.
1995 plus 50, which would be, 2045, then you would.
You're retired before then. Okay. Let's hope so.
I hope I'm still alive. I was going to say, I hope I'm still alive.
So, and then I referred to what was called environmental exposures in autism. Is that just another name for the pre-study?
No.
Okay. Because it looked like it was beyond thimerosal, and so that's kind of what intrigued me.
Does it? Do you have a name affiliated with it? Because there's tables. We have lots of tables where we describe studies. So I'm just, if you can tell me. Anyways, the NIH. All right. There's one interesting study too. There's the NIH. You and I have never talked about this study. There's a 2008 study that has Larry Pickering as an author,
Mm-hmm.
where they went and did the biopsies. It's Larry Pickering, Ian Lipkin.
Oh, yeah, I know all about this.
Okay, did you and I talk about this study?
No, you and I have never. I've talked to Ian Lipkin about it. In fact, he and I are not speaking
Okay.
right now because he doesn't like me very much. Okay.
Well, I mean,
no,
Ian Lipkin, right? Ian Lipkin is one of those. Well, I'll give you an example. When I was trying to hold them accountable, it was funded by the CDC. I don't know if you know that. It was funded by the CDC. The money was sent to the NIH. It was the worst mismanagement of federal funds that I've ever seen in terms of how that study was carried out. If you looked at the original study design and the fact that they only ended up with 25 autism cases, it's just insane. So I took over as project officer in the middle of that. And I kept trying to hold people accountable for what they were doing with the money. And the project officer on their end eventually dropped off the study. She was so fed up and tired with it.
Okay.
In the middle of the study, Ian Lipkin was asking for more money, and he actually, I don't think I kept the email, but it's the one email I wish I had kept, was where he said he was going to go talk to his congressman if we didn't give more money.
That sounds exactly like Ian Lipkin. Oh, my goodness.
No, he's an arrogant dick. And then the first author, Maddie Hornig, I think she's first author on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So Maddie Hornig, who was doing animal studies, is his significant other. So,
right.
You know,
they're shacking up. They're shacking up. They're not married, but that's been historic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was criminal because they published that study with 25 autism cases, and the power was like 0. And they tried to give the impression that they did a study of, gut biopsy. I don't remember exactly.
They ran PCR in the cases. They ran PCR in the controls. They found measles virus in several of the cases, and they found measles virus in the controls, and then they concluded there was no effect. But the actual conclusion of the study should be, it was a really crappy study. You can't tell anything.
It was the worst study ever.
Thank you. When you talk to Ian Lipkin, he's like, this is definitive. This shows there's no correlation. There's no such thing as autistic enterocolitis that has MMR in it. And you're like, oh, crap. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
Have you thought any more about perhaps talking with me to Posey's chief of staff?
So here's the deal. I told you I've been down this road before.
I understand.
In 1993. I'll tell you my experience in 1993. The staff members of congressmen are infamous for promising things they can't do.
Right.
It just isn't going to work well for me, and the primary reason is if I was going to do that, I would have to tell my wife, and I know my wife would say absolutely not.
Okay.
So I don't want to put my family in that situation right now. But again, if you can get people to start releasing documents, that once documents are out,
let me get the documents released. I feel like I'm close. I have to be very, very careful with how I finesse this. But there's a possibility that Posey will approach ISA directly on the House floor and say, hey, can I have those documents? Once they're in Posey's hands, then I can get them. Posey's not constrained.
Right. So let me tell you one thing about the Posey request, all right? The Posey request is the first time that I went and took those Excel spreadsheets from the original files. So I've hard copies with written notes from Frank DeStefano and Colleen Boyle, and then I have the electronic files too. But it's the first time I scanned everything and put it into a PDF to make sure they couldn't claim they didn't have it. And then I also gave it a very good label, so if they do searches, and they always say they do searches and find nothing, but I gave the file name a name that you could never miss in a search. But if you haven't seen the Excel files, if they didn't print them out, you know, that's, from my perspective, that's a red flag that they haven't provided everything. But if they did print them out, then you would see the things I had sent you. But my guess is they didn't, but I have no idea. So, you know, no one tells me what they did.
Did you make PDFs of the Excel spreadsheets? Did you scan them physically and make a PDF, or did you use like Adobe to make a PDF of those?
Recently I scanned them. Recently I scanned them, made a PDF, and I have a file directory. You know, as part of the POSI request, I provided all the scanned documents. But that's the first time I scanned them and created a situation that would be very easy to say.
CDC has not released anything from that POSI request, the one that you're talking about. CDC has
they're
not
not
given anything to POSI.
No, I know they're not going to, but I'm saying in the earlier request, I did provide the Excel files. I provided the Excel files, but I don't know if they actually, I don't know if they actually printed them for you guys or not.
No, those were never produced. I mean,
Okay,
and I would know
because
I've been through all of them.
But no, I know, but I'm just telling you, I provided those in that first round. The second round, I'm for this POSI request, which you may not see for another year or two. And I was told that I told you that they hired folks. Used $300,000 to hire people to go through my files. So those people are going through my files.
Well worth it.
Yeah,
it's well worth it. As long as they get released, that's all I can say. I can save them a lot of time. But
that's right.
Okay. Well, let me chew on this. You've given me a lot of assignments. I love you and hate you for this, but let me chew on this, and I'll keep you in the loop in terms of the production that we're getting from Isa, and you know, if we get anything from him. So.
Well, we're going to give you an honorary degree in epidemiology, PhD in epidemiology, if you follow through on these tests.
Bitchin'. You got it. Okay. Okay. All right. Hey, thanks a bunch, Bill.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah.